Hello, friends. I'm Maggie Ostara. I'm a human design expert and I am a sovereignty mentor for awakening women in the Aquarian Age, which is what we're in right now. We're in a deep time of transformation, and human design can be an incredible ally and partner with us during such a deep time of transformation. Today, we're going to talk about the first line profile in the human design system. This is known as the investigator or the resource. So we're going to dive into the superpowers and some of the nemesis of the first line. We're going to explore how they can grow their personal sovereignty, how they can be big contributors to the new earth that is now unfolding right now. And we're going to have a special focus on women at midlife, because the profiles can be such a huge support for women at midlife, where they're really evaluating and re-examining the agreements that they've made up until now, the way their lives have been going. We have big changes inside and outside at midlife. And so human design is a really great partner during that time, especially for people in deep transition and midlife women in particular. So let's go ahead and get started. So the number one superpower of our first lines is that they love to learn. They love to learn. They love to research. They love to dive down rabbit holes. They love to hyper focus, right? They get really, really involved in whatever it is that they're interested in. And this can be super supportive, obviously, for learning anything that you want to. Like if you want to learn human design, I've got a bunch of first lines in my Sovereign Sisterhood, which is our ecosystem for awakening women focused in human design. So a lot of them really benefit from being able to investigate human design with that investigator hat on, right? And so it's also really good, like if you want to learn an instrument or a new language, or when you're traveling and you want to find out everything about it when you're there. It's just a great way to be able to dive right in and learn everything there is about a subject. So in terms of the common culture, one of the ways that first lines can be really empowered is that they can become experts, right? If you think about it, they like to learn, they like to dive in, they like to research, they like to really understand things at a great depth. So they can become experts in their field, and it can be easier for them to position themselves as experts than maybe some other of the profiles, because they do have really that kind of deep dive mentality when it's relation to whatever it is that they're interested in. So generally speaking, first lines know more than anybody else in the room about whatever topic it is that they're really interested in. So they've been renamed the resource in quantum human design to acknowledge that these people really have a lot that they can contribute. This is the person, this could be a coworker, it could be a friend, it could be a colleague, it could be a neighbor. They're the person to go to for if you have trouble in your garden, right? The person you go to for trouble in your garden. If you're having trouble with a recipe, the person to go to help you with that recipe. If you have trouble understanding human design, you could go to somebody like me as a human design expert. So you can go to experts, right? But you can also go to the people in your life that who are really diving in and really know things. And chances are they might very well be a first line. One of the key factors for first lines to grow their inner sovereignty is to become aware of the emotional drivers that they have in relation to whatever it is that they're really investigating or they're really learning about. Because we have a lot of unconscious emotional drivers. And if the one that's driving that first line is more fear-based, right? If they're afraid of things, and so they're investigating and learning and exploring and so on because they're afraid of something, that energy is going to influence what they see, what they take in, and what they remember. And the brain is influenced by your emotional state in terms of what it takes in, okay, what it sees first of all, but then what it takes in, when it filters in, and then what it remembers of that. And then later on, your emotional state also influences what you recall and how you put the pieces together, because we don't ever remember a full memory. Okay, we remember bits and pieces, and then our brain kind of reassembles them into something we think of as a memory. And that's really influenced by our emotional state. So for anybody who's a researcher, whether you're first line or not, it's really important to understand that your emotional state is going to be influencing how you're doing whatever it is that you're investigating, whatever your process is. So it's important for the first line, because this way of really learning and investigating is such a core part of who they are, for there to be working on what's going on in the inner landscape, that they have a sense of what it is that's driving them. And if they do sense that some of that has to do with fear, comes out of survival, comes from, oh gosh, I've got to learn how to succeed in order to survive. Basically, a lot of us have been conditioned that way. And so the first line, if they can really transform that into enthusiasm, into excitement. One of the things we say in the breathwork community is fear is excitement without breath. So a lot of times you can shift your state by doing, respiratory breathwork practices, movement practices, all kinds of different things. This is something we explore a lot in the Sovereign Sisterhood. It's how do we change our state so that we move from more kind of fear-based, survival-based ways of being to being more in a state of possibility and potential and, what can happen? Positive anticipation. And so the first line, as they're doing their investigating, it will really benefit from taking a look at what is the underlying emotional tone. What is it that's driving them? And of course, if you're emotionally defined as well, you're going to want to pay attention to your emotional wave. But here I'm really talking about something that's more systemic or something that's more chronic, right? Where we tend to have kind of a fear-based way or a possibility way of engaging with life. And so that's something that the first line is really going to want to look at, because it's going to influence every single thing that they learn and every single thing that they remember. So for first lines, she can take command of her investigative process more effectively when she's in a resourced and positive state of being, right? And when you're in a more resourced and positive state of being, this grows your personal sovereignty, because you have more command over your energy field. You have more command over your choices. You're more responsive and less reactive, right? And so we want to be growing our sovereignty to be able to be more really embedded in our own selves, sovereign of ourselves, really in command of our own domain, which includes our emotions, our energy, our perspective. So as the investigator is going out and taking a look at whatever it is that they're diving into, she will do much better if she feels empowered from the inside rather than feeling at the mercy of outside forces that are going to be influencing her in more negative ways. A key aspect of the Aquarian age that we're now in and that we're really moving into, we're very transitional right now. It's like we're not fully in at all. We're really at the beginning. These cycles are thousands of years long. So we're at the beginning of that, but we can already feel so much is dropping away and so much more is coming in. And growing our inner sovereignty gives us a much more ballast to be able to navigate the changes that we are all experiencing. We're in the process of wresting away our consciousness from the conditioning that we've been living in for really millennia, and to be able to open up to new possibilities and new potentials, and to really release the light being that is who we truly are. We have a light being that is animating our form, and so we want to be able to really release that part of ourselves to have a bigger role in our lives so that we can feel always guided and directed from within. An awakened and empowered first line can help to inspire these new possibilities and new potentials rather than staying attached to the old world that is dying away. And that drive to learn can carry us beyond our fears, right? If you have an awakened and empowered first line who's not, stuck in the old and stuck in the fear, right? They can really help lead us beyond our fears into the future, to where we can be more solution oriented, we can be more creative, and we can be more resourced from within. Then when it comes from women at midlife, this is a time in our lives when we generally start to do a lot of kind of reevaluation. We want to take a look at what have we done before, what agreements have we made, how have we, taken care of our families, done our work in the world, and then we start to go, is that all really suiting me or not, right? And so it can start as a kind of just discomfort inside. And so for the midlife woman who's also a first line, right, her first line can really help her, because very often at this stage, the first thing she does is start to look for new perspectives. she's realizing the perspective she's been living inside of is limited, right? And that it's actually confining and it's not supporting her to have her full self-expression. Maybe she's really molded herself to be able to take care of her family, take care of her partner, take care of her kids, take care of her parents, take care of other people in her life, which is the way that we've largely been conditioned to be as women, right? Is that our role is not to self-actualize, not to be self-expressed, but actually to send our life force energy towards taking care of other people. Now, this is an attribute of whether you want to call it patriarchy or the dominator society, but women have gotten a pretty heavy programming around this. So a lot of times when we're waking up at midlife, we're kind of going, wait a minute, I'm not sure I want to keep living that way. Now, human design can be a huge asset and a partner and an ally for midlife women at this time, because when you start to learn your human design doesn't have any agenda about who it thinks you should be, right? It is an objective snapshot of where the planets were when you were born in 88 days prior, and they're put together. That's what it is. It's very objective in that way, right? It's not subjective. This is just what your design is. And then you are at choice about how you want to live it. Do you want to live it small or do you want to live it large? And a lot of times at midlife, women are going, you know what? I've kind of not lived all of my human design. I'm not even sure exactly who I am, because I've been spending so much time outsourcing my identity to ideas that are not necessarily my own, and also to caretaking for other people. So check that out for yourself if that rings true for you. And your profile in particular, because it's your character, can really help you get a one window onto who you are. One of the things I love about human design is it gives us many, many windows onto who we are. It's not one thing or many, many different things. It reveals our multidimensionality. And if you are a first line woman at midlife, we have a quiz that we're just starting to roll out. And it comes with a beautiful PDF, which is called Your Sacred Spark, so that you can understand some of the elements of awakening at midlife. Then we also have a quiz, which is What's Your Midlife Awakening Archetype? And that'll help you situate you within the kind of arc of development that women tend to go through at midlife. And it does have some human design elements, and it has a bunch of other elements as well. And we all love quizzes, right? So I encourage you to go ahead and take that and see which of your archetypes you have. First line profiles, when they're in a deep transition like this one, really thrive when they give themselves permission to step into the unknown, to move outside the boundaries of what they thought was okay for them, what was appropriate for them, what was approved for them, right? And to go into terrain that maybe they've never explored before. Maybe they felt like it wasn't for me, it was for other people. When they can take those blinders off, right, they may have put on to keep them on the straight and narrow, right? And then all of a sudden, the world starts to open up. Now, the thing is that even though they desire this, the changes at midlife that many women have, they may also resist it. And they can get stuck if they try to move too quickly, because that kind of change is stressful. Right? When you try to make too many changes at once, your nervous system may kind of put the brakes on, because big changes eats up a lot of energy. If you think about it, how much you have to integrate, how much you have to kind of navigate inside of your own self when you make a bunch of changes. And so if you're already depleted, if you're already fatigued, if you're already kind of overwhelmed by stress in your life, your nervous system could be like, oh, no, we're not going out and doing anything new like that. In this case, it's important to regulate and resource your nervous system. You want to make sure that you actually have the capacity to enter into something new. So if you find yourself in a transition and you want to make a change, you feel this desire to do it, and yet there's something that keeps being in your way, it may be that you need to take better care of your energy. This is a big subject. We can't go into it deep right now. But just know that this is a place that you might want to look, so that you have more of the capacity that you need to actually make those changes. Now, one of the advantages that a first line has is that a lot of times the first thing they want to do when they're facing a transition is to read or watch videos or write or to, maybe take a class that they can do at their own pace. And that can be really helpful when you're looking at a big change, because you want to be able to pace it out. Like I said, doing too many changes too fast can be really stressful. I should know, because I used to have a habit of doing that, and I would really kind of fry myself doing that. So just know, whatever the case is, when you're leaning into a transition, and like I said, right now we're all in a big transition phase here, is you want to be taking your nervous system so that you can actually do the work that's necessary to create those new neural pathways and then stabilize them and grow them so that you have new ways of being that are just become automatic for you. And then the nemesis for the first line, we have 3 different ones I want to talk about today. So the first one is that the first line can kind of fall into being controlling or domineering, where they fall into the need to be right. They can even become arrogant. Okay, now let's just recognize that this is encouraged by our culture, right? We kind of have the cult of the expert. And when we have that and somebody's trying to position themselves as an expert, they may feel the need to either dismantle other people's points of view, or make other people wrong for their points of view, or to assert the truth or the validity of what it is that they see. This is something that unfortunately a lot of times people do when they're trying to establish themselves as an expert. Now, when I was an Ivy League professor, it was everywhere. I have to tell you, people really felt the need to kind of diminish other people and their scholarship in order to promote their own. It's an unfortunate way that the academy works. It's one of the reasons that I actually left, because I really didn't like it. So I don't know how many of those people were first lines. I didn't know anything about human design back then. But I just want you to know that this is a pitfall that first lines can fall into. Even though becoming an expert can be a superpower, it can be a nemesis if what you do is fall into that kind of shadow aspect, where you try to control or manipulate other people or things outside of yourself. First of all, to feel safe, but then also to feel like that's really what you need to do in order to empower yourself. This can also be fed by that fear that I was talking about a minute ago, that fear of never knowing enough, right? And that fear of never knowing enough is something that can actually drive you to be more assertive or even more aggressive in asserting what you believe is really true. Now, the other side of that is the fear of not knowing enough can hold you back and lead you into playing more conservatively in life than otherwise you might, right? Staying inside of roles that are approved for you by outside forces, whether that was your family or the community you grew up in or the work situation that you're in, right? It can keep you kind of in your safety zone, where you're like, okay, well, I kind of know enough right here, but I'm not going to expand outward because I don't know enough to keep going farther out, right? So you want to check that out for yourself, because a lot of times first lines, this is kind of the more disempowered state, is they can hold themselves back, kind of just be like, oh, I'm not going to say anything yet because I don't really know enough yet, or I'm not going to write something about that, or I'm not going to do a video about that yet because I don't know enough about it. So check that out for yourself, because it's probably not true. Most first lines know more than anybody else in the room about the subject that they're interested in. So trust that. Then the third nemesis that I want to name here is that first lines can become overly intellectual. Okay, they can really live in their minds believing that this is the primary way to learn and to become knowledgeable and to become an expert. What they don't realize is that that left brain way of knowing, that logic, is only one of 3 ways of knowing mapped in the human design system. It's important, but it's not even the primary one. And so we want to be able to honor and access all of the different ways of knowing that human design presents to us, which includes our intuition, which is actually the number 1, and then creativity. So if the first line is able to get out of their heads and be able to be more creative and more intuitive, to partner with their bodies and that light being that I was talking about before, to realize that their investigation can be an investigation into these other aspects of themselves, not just the mental stuff that they can get through researching, right? That they can actually spend time going inside, exploring what it is that their inner being wants to share with them. learning how their body really works, what they feel, what are their emotions like, what are their sensations like. That can be a beautiful way for them to investigate as well, because the body and the spirit is as much of a source of knowledge as the left brain logical mind is. So to summarize, first lines are really happy when they get to dive in and investigate and learn about whatever it is that they're interested in. They can be a tremendous resource for the rest of us because they have that incredible quality. And they do best when they can do that from a sense of possibility and potential, not from fear. And when they can expand into using their intuition and their creativity as ways of learning and investigating, as well as with their logical mind. First lines can be such great contributors and assets, resources during this time of awakening as we're moving into this Aquarian age. So much is falling away. So much is being created and opening out. And so the investigator can really be a leader in this time if they choose to. If you're newer to human design, I do have a playlist. It's called my Start Here playlist that really kind of walks you through the fundamentals of human design, including the profiles. We're building those out right now. But it covers type, strategy, authority. And so you can go to that to really kind of get your foundational education about human design through that particular playlist. And I'll make sure that that's at the end of the video as well. All right, my friends, many blessings, much love. Take good care.